Welcome to Working Lunch, the SLO Chamber's weekly series where we get to sit down with community leaders and hopefully head into the weekend feeling a little more informed and connected to our community in these isolating times. I'm Jim Dantona, President and CEO of the SLO Chamber, and today you get a peek behind the curtain of the incredibly important work happening with Michelle Call, Executive Director of the Gala Pride and Diversity Center. While some may be most familiar with the annual Pride celebration, the center works year-round to create a safe place for everyone on the gender and sexuality spectrum. Committed to ensuring a healthy and vibrant network of social gatherings, support groups, events, educational services, and business resources for all individuals, the organization reflects the rich social life of the LGBTQ+ community and its allies in our county. After volunteering with the center for more than 10 years, Michelle became the organization's first executive director in 2018 and has been hard at work in what she calls her ultimate dream job ever since. I'm so looking forward to talking to Michelle about the recent Supreme Court decision, Pride Month in the time of COVID, and what's new at the organization. Thank you so much for being here, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me, Jim. I'm delighted.
Well, it's such a pleasure. First, let's just start. As we sit down to lunch, first and foremost, where are you zooming in from today, and what are you having for lunch?
I'm zooming in from my home. I've been working mostly at home lately. I'm immune compromised, so I've been being very careful in the time of COVID. And I got lunch, thank you so much to the Chamber, from SLO Provisions. And SLO Provisions is an LGBT owned company, and their food is fantastic. They've just opened their dining rooms for in-person dining in, and their food is delicious.
Yeah, they're certainly one of our favorites, and usually they're one of the folks we make sure when we're doing our Insight Studio and Ledge events, they're usually we're bringing in their great food for our friends coming to learn. So I'm sure that'll be a wonderful lunch as soon as we let you eat a little bit.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit, as you said, immune compromised. Tell us a little bit about your day in shelter life. Who are you sheltering with? What are your new parts of your day in general? How's it going?
Where I'm sheltering at home with my family, my spouse, and I have a 16-year-old child. And so both my family, a lot of the members are autistic. And so being at home has actually been somewhat of a boon to us, being able to access things online, concerts and things like that, movies, where it's not too loud and there's not too much going on. It's actually enabled us to do some things that we weren't able to do before. And I kind of love working from home.
I can certainly understand how that's great. And that's actually really amazing. You talked a little bit about that, and I've seen it in some of the concerts and plays and stuff. So that's a really great opportunity. What have you guys been, what kind of concerts have you been seeing or at the house?
There's actually been a lot of LGBT content. Centerlink, which is an organization for nonprofit LGBT centers across the United States and the world, has been putting on some amazing fundraisers. We've also been watching drag shows, SLO Queerdos. A lot of those folks have been putting on drag shows, that kind of thing. It's been really fun.
Well, that's awesome. Well, before we dig into all the amazing things going on locally, obviously this week has been pretty surprising in a great way. With the Supreme Court. And I want to take a moment to talk about the Supreme Court's landmark LGBTQ+ rights decision earlier this week. For those who may not be familiar with Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, can you share a quick overview of the impact of that ruling?
Absolutely, thank you. So the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1968, and the part that we're talking about is Title IX, and that's the part that says that you can't discriminate against somebody when you're hiring or firing on the basis of sex and race and religion and all those things. And so there's been some question as to whether that applies to sexual orientation and gender identity.
And so now with that ruling, it seems that it would apply and they get all the same protections that others are entitled to, correct?
Yes, so it's definitely the beginning. There's still a lot to fight for, but conservative Justice Neil Gorsuch said in his decision that the limits of the drafter's imagination supply no reason to ignore the law's demands. And so what he was saying in that is just because we didn't have the awareness we have now doesn't mean that those protections shouldn't extend to people of all sexual orientations and gender identities.
Well, yeah, and it's, obviously, as you said, quite a ways to go, but particularly when it comes to health outcomes, equal access to health care. And you earlier this week when we were doing a little conversation, you shared some alarming stats about health risks for LGBTQ plus people locally, both related to and existing before COVID.
Yes, I was talking about the HIV statistics in our county, which I got from Access Support Network. They do HIV, Hep C testing and support. And I was at a seminar that they gave, and we talked about SLO County HIV rates. If you're a white man who has sex in men, your chance of catching HIV is 1 in 13. If you're a Latino man, it's 1 in 4. And if you're a Black man, it's 1 in 2.
Wow.
So yeah, and all these underlying health conditions and intersectional identities just increase the risk of being of catching and having trouble from complications.
Well, and it's such, and it's one of those things that certainly as a community we're obviously aware of, but it's, you don't hear it every day. And so when you hear shocking statistics at that level, it really brings it home, and really, I think, helps people understand why it's important that we are making sure to cover all of these pieces.
Right, right. Because when you add the extra piece on, when you're LGBTQ, you're already at risk. Then if additionally you're Black, or additionally you have a disability, things like that, it just piles on.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And again, I think it's, it's one of those things as we were going into the week, knowing, probably had a little different idea how this Supreme Court would find on these things, and shockingly wonderful to hear how they did. And again, to keep the ball moving in the right direction.
Yes, and actually in his dissent, Judge Alito was concerned that this might be a slippery slope, that now gay and transgender people might also have access to health care and all these other things, kind of laying out the roadmap for us.
Yeah, in the opposite direction that we
Yeah.
that we wanted to go. That's great. Yeah. Well, obviously June is Pride Month, and as it is, coinciding with the groundswell of support for the Black Lives Matter movement, many people are becoming reacquainted with the origins of Pride at Stonewall. Can you share a little bit about the key role that trans women of color have played in gay rights and the overall kind of impact of Pride at Stonewall?
Absolutely. So I was just mentioning a little earlier to Molly that actually the Stonewall Inn was really supported by the Genovese crime family, and it was mob bosses that were keeping these places going by bribing the cops. There wasn't even a liquor license at the Stonewall Inn, so a lot of folks, and especially Black folks, would congregate and to celebrate their gender identity, their sexual orientation, and to be free with each other. And several of these people like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera were right there in the thick of it when whoever forgot to bribe the cop that night or chose not to, and then the place was raided. They didn't want to be, so the deal was that they weren't allowed to wear clothes of the opposite gender, and their genders were being checked by the police. And Marsha P. Johnson wasn't having any of that. She wasn't going to allow it, and so it kind of went from there. Went 5 nights. We had a lot of things going on, and it was really the beginning of the modern struggle for gay rights.
That's incredible, because I actually didn't know that either. It's that there was the crime bosses who were keeping. Of course, makes perfect sense once you say it. But that's amazing, and I think Molly said it. And now I understand her comment, because I was coming in and out. That why did they teach that in the history class? Because that's a really interesting fact.
Right. Right. And I mean, and just, this isn't necessarily to do with Stonewall, but we talked about the intersections before. Black transgender men and women are at the highest risks for violence. And actually, the United States has more murders of trans people than any other country apart from Brazil and Mexico. Yeah, and so it's really an issue that we need to be dealing with, and I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing a lot of all Black lives matter, talking about Black trans lives matter, and bringing that to the forefront as well, so that we can seek justice for all people.
That's an incredibly important part to understand for all of us. And just as a note, if you're on Facebook Live and you have a question, you can put it in the Facebook Live, and if we can get to it, we definitely will. Because this is such an incredible, there's so many, as Michelle and I have been talking before, there's so many interesting pieces to this. Like, for instance, this year's Pride, obviously in the time of COVID, will take place mostly virtually. And people should probably take a look at your website for all the info, but I was hoping you could share a few highlights and elements that you're most excited for.
I would love to just share about 3 different things that we have going on. One isn't us, but so this Saturday we're celebrating a Transgender Day of Pride. From 4 to 6 p.m. we're going to have Dr. Jameson Green, who this is being brought by Trans Central Coast, which is a committee of Gala, and he's a pioneer to do with physical care of transgender people, transitions, fighting for rights, that kind of thing. So he's going to speak from 4 to 5, and then from 5 to 6, we're going to allow community members to share stories, poems, anything that they're interested in sharing with other people, so that we can really celebrate transgender folks during our Pride Month celebrations. So that's going to be on Saturday, and you can send email to transcentralcoast@gmail.com for details on that. It's also on our website. And the trans in Trans Central Coast has a Z, not an S. That. And then another thing that's happening next week that I think is fantastic is Santa Maria House of Pride and Equality, which is an LGBTQ organization in Santa Maria. It's doing 4 or 5 evenings of Pride. It's going to be from the 22nd through the 26th, and they're doing all kinds of activities. You can find out what they're doing at santamariapride.com. It's all one word, santamariapride.com. They're going to have panels of people talking about things. They're going to have drag shows, all kinds of different community activities. Their website is fabulous, and I highly recommend that. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about briefly is on the 27th of June, there's going to be a 24-hour global Pride. And this is the big thing that's come together out of COVID is almost all the Pride celebrations that are in person have been canceled. Even if we could get together, that many people to be exposed is not a good idea. So everywhere around the world is coordinating this Pride, and our art curator, Lynn Schmidt, who is also a photographer, has been very involved with that. So people should tune into that, and then they can also come by the center from 1 to 3 on a Saturday afternoon on the 27th. And we're going to have drag queens. They can pick up T-shirts that they've pre-ordered, or they can take a photo on our new rainbow steps, all those kinds of things. So all that information is also on our website.
That's fabulous. And it really, one of the things from the chamber side we've noticed is there has been some, even though we love being together in person and celebrating each other and connecting, we've actually found some upsides to having virtual events. Are you seeing some of that same from on the events that you're working on, especially like you just talked about, right? A worldwide kind of event that everybody can participate in.
Yes, we're definitely, so there are some struggles, and there are some people who do much better meeting in person, but we're also finding our online groups are more accessible to a lot of people, and we may continue a hybrid afterwards, particularly the Gay Men's Book Club. They went virtual almost immediately, and they found that members who've long since moved away came back and are now participating in the group again, and they're having catch-ups, reunions, and they really love it.
Oh, that's fabulous. And again, it is that interesting way. Sometimes for people who just aren't as social, it's great to kind of be in a safe space that they're comfortable with and making those connections. But that sounds amazing too, that finding ways to bring back that connection. And as part of it, you kind of mentioned in that last part of the Trans Central Coast Pride event, poetry. And I often see poetry as part of an integral part of the Pride celebration. Why do you think there is such a natural pairing of the two?
I think that poetry and poetry to music, which is song, right, is a powerful method of expression. And I think that it just helps people to get their thoughts out, to share those kinds of things, and it helps us to hear it. Because when I hear a poem that really resonates with me, I love spoken word poetry. I love those poetry slams, and it's a whole different way of communicating that really just gets to the heart of things.
That's fabulous. Um, you know, and back before COVID-19, you were leading a number of substantial efforts for the organization, including a name change and new support groups. Tell me a little bit about those initiatives and where do they stand right now?
Well, so I was hired, like you said, in 2018, and one of the things that the board said when they hired me is that they were planning to do this name change and a focus shift as well. So we were the Gay and Lesbian Alliance since 1997 when we were incorporated, and that was fine for the time. But we've come to understand that there are lots more letters in LGBTQ than just the gays and lesbians. Although we totally still appreciate, and gays and lesbians are a huge part of our organization, but we wanted to figure out how to change our name and our attitude to be more inclusive. So we had a town hall meeting in July of 2018 where we answered questions from some members and things like that. And then we had a big vote just at the beginning of this year to amend our bylaws and institute our new name. And so that passed, and now we are in that process. We're about to get the letter back from the state. The state is a little bit behind at the moment due to COVID for doing the name change, but that will be our official piece. But we also have our new logo and all those things, and we will be revealing that on the 27th of June at our Pride celebration. And Verdin Marketing is helping us to put the word out about that. We were part of their 24-hour give a few years ago, and so they've been fabulous for us.
Yeah, Mary does amazing work, and they're a great team, and they really give to the community and really support us. So all of us. So that's awesome to hear. One of the things that we were kind of talking about, and I think it's one of the efforts, is as your organization. People who are LGBTQ plus are particularly impacted by the change brought on by COVID, as we were talking before, on the susceptibility of health. It sounds like those support groups and summer camps that are coming together, that you're putting on some of those, are coming at an incredibly impactful time. Is that happening this summer?
Definitely. So we're actually in the first week of a summer camp. We have a wonderful youth summer camp director, Mia Rolfe, who's an intern, and they are doing an amazing job. We're finding that a lot of our youth were thirsty for something. I think they've been at home, there's been no school, there's been no contact. So they're doing part of it online and then part in person with masks and socially distanced. And I think it's really making a positive mental health impact. Being apart, being isolated is hard.
Yeah, it's very difficult for all of us, and even more so when you, again, as you said, the intersectional challenges that happen on a lot of these pieces. It just layers on, correct?
Correct. And actually, it's interesting because we're talking about all this name change, this new focus and all of that. And I firmly believe that in order for us to be a Pride and Diversity Center, we really have to be able to speak to the communities that we want to serve. So that's one of the things that I'm doing this year is I'm taking intensive Spanish classes. I believe it's really important for me to be bilingual as the director of the organization. I expect in the next 6 months I will be fully bilingual. I'm putting a lot into it. And that's really exciting to me because I feel like as we move forward into the community, we're going to be able to be even more effective.
That's amazing. Really, congratulations. And that it will be, you don't see a lot of that. People, they want to do great, diverse, and want to support those things, but you're really diving in. That's amazing. How have you found it to be? Have you gotten pretty good?
I love it. In fact, I'm working with live tutors in various countries through a website called Baselang. And yesterday I was working with Cesar to translate the presentation I have about the Gala Center into Spanish. And we were translating the new mission statement and stuff like that. And it's just really, it's really fulfilling and exciting. And I think I maybe had even forgotten a bit how fulfilling it is to learn something new that's a real challenge, and to go into something like this. And it's making me feel good in all the other areas as well. So yeah, I highly recommend doing something new.
That's amazing. Congratulations. That's so impressive. Well, and it goes right into, so much of your work focuses on the importance of safe spaces, even how you're improving your own personal abilities. You know, despite a decently large LGBTQ plus population, why do you think we've been unable to sustain maybe a queer bar, lounge, coffee shop in SLO since Breezes closed in the 90s?
That's a great question. So yes, so Breezes was fabulous. We love Lisa Dean, and the Central Coast Queer Archive Project is currently putting together all those memories, which is really fantastic. And since Breezes closed, we've had all kinds of one-off functions. There were queer nights out for several years. Allies like SLO Provisions and Novo have held events, but we really haven't had a gathering space other than the Gala Center, and we're not set up for just casual drop-in visiting. I don't know why, but I would love to see a coffee shop. I don't particularly want a bar because although it could serve alcohol, right? But I want something that's for the whole family. And so I would be really happy to see some coffee shop that was LGBTQ plus focused, and I would go there a lot.
Well, I think for all of our chamber folks out there listening, you're commercial property owners. I think there's a clear population here that you could do very well if you got in front of that.
Yes, please come and talk to us. Yes.
That's awesome. And certainly the idea of family-friendly pride events, is that part of some of the things you're working, or is what the Gala is focusing on too, or are there options for that?
Yes, so we were doing several in-person events when we could do that. We usually have an annual family picnic in the summer, and we've done drag queen story hour. Wonderful local drag queen Juicy came and did story hour for us. That was amazing. And we have open houses where you can meet the board, and we do open mic. There's lots of family, and of course the summer camp is 6 weeks of only family type stuff. So yes, we do events that are for adults only as well, of course, like our wonderful drag shows and stuff like that. But it's really important that we do that, the whole family focus. And so yes, we definitely do that.
Well, I think you mentioned Juicy there, and I was just reminded that, and really proud of our community as we're doing banners around the community, talking about our community and what we stand for. And I believe Juicy is one of the banners highlighting pride, right?
I want to say that's Rose All Day.
Oh, okay.
Rose All Day is another one of our fabulous local drag queens. Yes, and I think that one's near the train station.
Correct. Yeah. And it was so amazing. And you're right, it was Rose All Day, and it's such an incredible. I love that the city was invested in highlighting that, and the community got around it again to make sure that we have a safe space in our community for everyone, which is so great, and love that we embrace it. Would love, I know there have been a lot of changes in all of our lives and organizations because of COVID. Are there any changes personally or professionally that you think or hope will be permanent as part of this?
Well, one of the things that I don't think I'm ever going to do again is shake hands with someone. And I thought about times in the past when I've shaken hands with someone and I knew they had a cold or something, but I'm British and I felt like my politeness was more important than my health. No, that's not the case. So I don't think I'll be shaking hands again. I will be finding other ways to greet people and that kind of thing. And I think the other thing that I've really embraced during this time is more intentional meetings with people and not just bumping into them. So I was very much relying on going to a group event or a chamber event or something like that, and I would bump into people there and I would talk to them about this or the other thing. Now I've been doing a lot of setting half-hour Zoom chats to catch up with people and having an intentional half-hour conversation, and it's made a huge difference.
That's fabulous, and it's a great point. And I'm actually going to jump over to Facebook Live. They have a question here, but it's actually, I know you are in the current Leadership SLO class as a student of it, but the gentleman leading it, Dan Revoir, put a question on, and I think it's fabulous. He says, "Hi, Michelle. You're a superhero." Two-part question here. Do you watch any TV in the drag genre?
I watch Pose.
Okay. Dating back to Paris is Burning, my friends and family love these shows. Do you have, so Pose is one of them. Do you have a favorite Drag Race Pose, others, besides Pose?
Okay, so I have watched some of RuPaul's Drag Race, and that's a great show too. I think that Pose is the one that I prefer, and it's not really necessary. So, well, the reason I prefer Pose is because I learned so much from it. I learned so much of the history of how Black folks did things back then, and I love the focus. And Billy Porter is marvelous. And all the folks on that show and who are going on to do other things. Yeah, I highly recommend Pose. It's on Netflix.
Awesome. So moreover from Dan, do you think popular culture intersects with change making efforts like the more direct education and advocacy work that Gala leads?
That's a great question. Thank you, Dan. I definitely, yes, absolutely. I think that we're seeing a great deal more LGBTQ plus exposure in media, in television shows, in all that kind of thing. I'm seeing same-sex relationships. I'm seeing non-binary characters. I'm seeing all that kind of thing just being presented as a normal part of the show, whereas 10 or 20 years ago, that was definitely not the case. So I just think that the normalization is super helpful for everyone.
Very good point. Great point. And so kind of now just a little question. We've spent a lot of time. I want a little bit more about you. You're obviously, as you mentioned, originally from the UK. What do you miss most since you've been in California? If
Real fish and chips.
Great point. Yes. That's amazing. That's a great answer. Has there been something recently that has made you smile, laugh in the last week that you felt was, that you could share?
So just like, okay, so if we're talking just personal stuff,
Yeah.
my child and I have rediscovered Super Mario Party 8 on the Wii, and we're playing against each other, and my child is non-binary, that's why I say that. So they beat me all the time, but we have so much fun with it, and it just makes us giggle and laugh, and it's just really nice to do something that's not related to anything else.
Well, and that's why I wanted to jump into this question, because we got to remember there's other things. I mean, there's so much going on, and it's heavy, and it's important work that we're doing, but there's also got to be Super Mario Party 8.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
That's great. So with all that's going on right now, is there someone you are especially grateful for, someone who's really shown up and made a difference for you?
Yes, I am especially grateful for my friend and mentor, Dr. Leola Dublin McMillan. I feel like she has been showing up for our town, for our county, for our state, and for me. And as we work through these things, and as the Gala board and the Trans Central Coast Steering Committee try to become more diverse and inclusive, Leola is leading that for us. She's helping us to figure all those things out, and she has absolutely been a rock. And I'm so grateful for her presence in my life.
That's awesome. And I love that, those folks, it's one of the great things we want to do in this program is to highlight some of those people who are supporting our great leaders in our community. So thank you for sharing that. That's incredible. What are you looking forward to this weekend? Obviously, you talked a little bit about, you have the virtual event coming up, but is there anything else that's coming up?
So for me personally, one of the things I love at the weekend is going to walk early at the beach. I go between 7 and 8 in the morning. No one else is there. Like, you don't have to worry about being socially distanced. It's great. So that I'm looking forward to tomorrow morning. And then on Sunday, it's Father's Day. So I look forward to celebrating the amazing job my spouse is doing with raising our child together.
That's awesome. Well, I can't believe it. We're already at a half hour, and it flies by so fast. Michelle, thank you so much for eating lunch with us. And we thank all of you who've joined us today. We hope to see you next week, same time, same place. We'll have another great community leader here. And if you have an idea for a future working lunch guest, send us an email at slochamber@slochamber.org. Thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks again, Michelle.
Well, thank you for having me.